Okay, good day to all of you. This discussion assumes that so far you have learned the following. Let's see. The unit circle and the relationship between the linear and angular measures of a central angle in a unit circle, converting degrees to radians and vice versa, angles in standard position and coterminal angles, the 6 trigonometric or circular functions, use of reference angles to find exact values of circular functions. Okay. Now for our today's lesson objectives, we have the following. Derive the fundamental trigonometric identities. Next is to simplify trigonometric expressions. And then the last one will be to prove other trigonometric identities. Okay, so ano nga ba itong mga trigonometric identities na to? What are these? So to define an identity, it's an equation that is true for all defined values of a variable. Say it's true for all theta or for all x, depending on the variable present in the equation. So we are going to use the identities that we will establish to prove or establish other identities. So the algebra will also play an important role here. So some prerequisite skills will be factoring or special products. Okay. Let's recall the following. By the way, every time we see this icon, that means this slide is very important and you can take a screenshot of this to include in your e-notes. So cosine theta is equal to x, sine theta is equal to y from our previous discussions. Tangent theta is y over x, cotangent theta is x over y, they are reciprocals. Secant theta is the reciprocal of cosine, so it's 1 over x. Cosecant theta is the reciprocal of sine, so it's 1 over y. Okay. So sabi din natin, since this is y over x, we can express tangent theta as sine over cosine. Likewise, cotangent theta can be expressed as cosine over sine, secant as 1 over cosine, and cosecant as 1 over sine. So yung mga reciprocal identities natin, we have the following. Secant theta is 1 over cosine theta. Cosecant theta is 1 over sine theta, reciprocal identities. Also, cotangent theta is 1 over tangent theta. Take note this has other versions. Hindi tayo nakafix sa ganitong version. Pwede mag-swap itong dalawang to. So, pwede nating sulat as cosine theta equals 1 over secant theta. Similarly, ito din pwedeng mag-swap. So, sine theta is equal to 1 over cosecant theta. Itong ding dalawang to pwedeng mag-swap. So it's tangent theta equal to 1 over cotangent theta. Pwede rin na naka-product form na, na sinusulat natin yung product nito is equal to 1. So pwede rin halimbawa yung identity natin cosine theta over cosine theta times secant theta, we can replace that product as 1. Okay? Same as sine theta times cosecant theta, we can replace their product as 1. Tangent theta times cotangent theta, we can replace their product as 1. Okay? So ayun, hindi tayo naka-fix na ito lang yung version niya, no? So ito lang yung mga basic na versions yung nasa red rectangles. Pero pwede pang ma-derive yung other versions niya, just like the blue one here. Mga quotient identities naman natin. So those trigonometric functions that can be expressed as a quotient of the other trigo functions. Syempre meron tayong tangent tsaka cotangent. Sine over cosine and cosine over sine respectively. So, ang ating version dito, pwede rin i-multiply to, equal yun sa sine theta. Remember, tangent times cosine theta is equal to sine theta. Same as the product of this, it can be equal to cosine theta. Pwede rin mag-swap tong dalawang to, no? Pag pinag-swap natin, cosine theta is sine over tangent theta. Same as this one. Sine theta, pag pinag-swap natin, cosine theta over cotangent theta. Although, again, these are the more familiar quotient identities. Pwede lang nating ma-derive, again, yung product na to, ulitin natin, can be expressed as sine theta. The product of these two can be expressed as cosine theta. Yung Pythagorean identities natin, di ba familiar tayo sa Pythagorean theorem, yung a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So, ito naman yung ating pinaka-basic na Pythagorean identity. Sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1. It's coming from this relationship wherein the radius of the unit circle, which is also the hypotenuse of this right triangle over here. Bali, dual role itong line segment na to, no? With respect to the circle, it's the radius, but with respect to this right triangle here, it's a hypotenuse. Okay, so we can have this equation sine squared plus cosine squared theta equals 1, since cosine theta and sine theta are the legs of this right triangle. Okay, now if we're going to divide both sides by cosine squared theta, yan, that means this one will become equal to 1. This fraction becomes 1. Using the previous identity that we have, this is tangent. Sine over cosine is tangent. But since we're squaring that fraction, we're squaring both numerator and denominator. So that means we can square the entire fraction, which is sine over cosine, and that's tangent. Okay? Tapos ito naman, that is equal to 1. Magka-cancel out lang sila. So 1 over cosine, from our reciprocal identity, 1 over cosine is equal to secant theta. But since we're squaring that, that will become secant squared theta. So ayun, tangent squared theta plus 1 is equal to secant squared theta. That's another version coming from this basic Pythagorean identity. Now, if we are to divide both sides of this equation by sine squared theta, kung halimbawa, ito naman yung gusto nating maging equal sa 1. So dividing both sides by sine squared theta will give us this. So this will cancel out. Magiging equal lang yun sa 1. Diba? Every time you have a fraction with equal numerator and denominator, this becomes 1. Tapos yung cosine over sine, diba? Yun yung fraction na equal kay cotangent. Pero since we're squaring this, the squaring also applies for the cotangent. Okay? Same as for the 1 over sine, which is cosecant, the squaring will apply for the cosecant as well. Okay, so that's 1 plus cotangent squared theta equals cosecant squared theta. Ayan. Notice that if we are writing a positive integral exponent, ayan, like the 2 here, this is actually equivalent to, let's get a pen. Yan. Baka kasi nalilito tayo, baka kala natin yung tangent theta ay iba dun sa ganitong expression. That is similar to this one. Okay? So this is the same as this one. Okay? Pag positive integer. Same as for this one, that is equal to secant theta and you're squaring that. Okay? Kasi yun yung nangyari dito sa fraction na to. Diba? We can express the 1 over cosine theta. This is 1 over cosine theta. For example, that is being squared. Yun, baka kasi naka-confuse lang. So same as this one, di ba? Yung cosine over sine here. Yan, cosine theta over sine theta. We're squaring this fraction. Di ba? Kasi naka-square sila pareho. So that means this fraction, which is equivalent to cotangent, is being squared. Ayun. Okay, so moving on from those identities, we can use this actually trigo hexagon. Yan, minsan may tinatawag tayong trigo piatos kasi parang ka-shape siya ng piatos na chips eh. Yan, hexagon. So make sure lang that the trigonometric functions are positioned in a right way kasi pag mali yung positioning niya, hindi magma-materialize yung mga identities natin. Okay? So, why hexagon? Kasi 6-sided figure, 6 vertices representing each trigonometric function. Okay? So, kuha ko ulit ng laser pointer. Yan. So, ang uunahin natin yung tangent. So, unahin natin yung basic, di ba? Sine, cosine, and tangent. So, tangent is equal to sine over cosine. Okay? So, every time na umiikot tayo, yun, nagdi-divide tayo. Okay. Yan. Okay. So, tangent is equal to sine over cosine. Tapos, ang gagawin natin, tangent across that is cotangent, opposite. Tapos, si sine opposite that, si cosecant. Cosine opposite that is secant. So, you'll be able to know the other 3 vertices or 3 trigonometric function for each vertex. Okay? Tapos, anong purpose nito? So, alam natin may 1 sa gitna. Lalagay natin yung 1 sa gitna. Okay. Tapos, that means sine times cosecant multiplying the opposite vertices gives this product. Okay, gives this answer. Cosine times secant is 1. Tangent times cotangent is equal to 1. Okay. Tapos, another thing, kapag nasimulan na natin yung pag-divide, tangent theta is equal to sine over cosine. Tapos, siyempre, alam natin that pagpabaliktad, pwede rin, no? Cotangent is equal to cosine over sine. Hindi ganong ka-popular yung ito. Let's see this one. Okay. Diba alam natin, tangent, pag pumaganon tayo, moving clockwise, nagko-quotient rule tayo, parang equals, tapos ito yung division. Okay? So, same as pag ganun yung movement natin. Okay? So, ito yung equals, tapos ito yung numerator naman, pag counterclockwise, cosine over sine. Okay? Yun. Hindi masyadong popular yung secant is equal to, every time you're moving on a clockwise direction, again, pagka, kunwari dito you decide to start on this vertex. So that means secant theta is equal to tangent divide by, di ba? Yung kasunod niyang dalawang trigo functions, you're dividing them. So secant is equal to tangent over sine. Let's prove it here. Secant theta, let's use a different color. Let's see, secant theta, is it really true that secant theta is equal to, sabi dito, tangent this vertex over this vertex kasi siya yung kasunod moving on a clockwise direction. Okay? So, tangent theta over sine theta. So, ang tangent theta natin, is it really equal to that? So, ang tangent theta is sine theta over cosine theta. Tapos, di ba, yung ating division is multiplication by the reciprocal. So, ang reciprocal ng sine theta is 1 over sine theta. Ayun, so magka-cancel yung sine theta. You're left with 1 over cosine theta, which is secant theta nga. Okay. Ayun, so ganun yung ating trigo piatos. Tapos, isa pa, no? Meron pa tayong isa pang version. Let's use a highlighter naman. Okay? So, gagawin natin yung ating triangle. So, magpo-form tayo ng parang greater than symbol like this. Okay? So, that means sine squared, you're squaring this vertex, the trigo function on this vertex, plus the square of the trigo function on this vertex. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. Dapat pala ibang kulay ng highlighter natin. Let's use the green one. Yan. So, sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So, it's like moving here and there. Okay, greater than symbol like this. Tapos, dito naman, diba, it's this one, yung sine squared plus cosine squared. Ito naman, pag ganun, no? Pag ganun yung ating movement, greater than symbol. So, tangent squared theta plus 1 is equal to secant squared theta. Okay? Yun. So, pag ganun, using this identity. Tapos yung third one, pag ano na naman. Basta yung stroke natin is like from left to right and then downwards. Downwards na diagonally downwards. So 1 plus cotangent squared is equal to cosecant squared. Yan. Ayun siya. Okay. Ayan. Pero this sheet of paper or this slide will also be useful for you. Ito naman yung mga basic ones which you can take a picture of for your additional e-note. Okay. Ayan. So from time to time, we're going to recall those identities. Okay, let's see. Ayan. So that icon appears means this is a very important slide. So let's simplify the following using the identities. First up is sine theta over sine theta times cosecant theta. These are reciprocal functions, sine and cosecant. So their product, di ba, sine and cosecant, ito yun eh. So ibig sabihin, pag minultiply natin sila, the product is just equal to 1. Okay, ito yun, di ba? Para ka lang nag-cross multiply. Now for number 2, tangent theta times cosecant theta. Hindi siya yun eh. Kasi, di ba, tangent theta times cosine, and this is cosecant. So, what we do is, yan, hindi ito yung in-apply natin. Pero, why is that equal to to secant theta? Let's see, no? Let's use a pen. Yan. So, again, yung tangent theta can be expressed as sine over cosine using this identity. So, we'll use the sine over cosine. Tapos, yung cosecant theta natin is 1 over sine theta. This is similar to the one we derived using the TRIGO Piato. So, this will cancel. The sine theta will cancel out. 1 over cosine theta is this. So, that will just be equal to secant theta. Okay, now let's go to number 3. Secant squared theta minus 1. That's another version of this identity. Taking note of this, diba, if you move this to the other side or add negative 1 to both sides, that will be just tangent squared theta. Okay, now for number 4. Cosecant squared divide by secant squared. Yan. So, ang cosecant squared natin is 1 over sine squared. No? So, we can write that as 1 over sine squared. Okay. Mas preferred natin yun, no? 1 over sine squared theta. Tapos, divide by secant squared theta. Since we're dividing by secant squared, we can just multiply by the reciprocal of that. So, what's the reciprocal of secant squared? That will be cosine squared theta. Remember, if you're squaring this, it's also the same as squaring this fraction. Okay, so cosine squared theta. Yan, multiplication. We shift to multiplication. So since pareho sila naka-square, if you do the multiplication process, this will be cosine over sine. The quantity squared, cosine over sine, is right here. So that means that will be cotangent squared theta. Okay, kasi naka-square eh. Now for number 5, cotangent squared theta minus cosecant squared theta. That will be this one. It's similar to this one. If you move the cosecant to the other side, that means you're going to move the 1 to the other side. Okay, so that means 1 will become negative. So this is negative 1. Okay, so that's it, no? Ayan yung ating mga identities. So, meron tayong mga hints for establishing identities. First is to get the common denominators when needed, especially if you're given with fractions. If you have squared functions, look for the Pythagorean identities. Most of the time, that will be useful. Also, work on the more complex side first. It's easier to simplify the complex than to complicate the simple. Okay. In establishing an identity, you should not move things. This is very important, no? You should not move things from one side, yung mas kilala natin bilang transposition, from one side of the equal sign to the other. Okay? Kunwari meron tayo ditong minus 1, it's not proper to move the minus 1 to the other side para maging plus 1 kasi we haven't established the identity. Okay? So, instead, ang gagawin natin is to substitute using the identities na alam na natin and simplify on one side or the other side or both until both sides match. Okay? So meaning pag may left side tayo, left-hand side equal to the right-hand side, we can just manipulate this till this becomes equal to the right-hand side. Or another thing is if you're given with this one, yan, pwede naman nating i-manipulate si right-hand side till it becomes equal to the left-hand side. Or pwedeng yung left-hand side, let's show that it will become equal to an expression, say C. Tapos yung right-hand side, we can show that that expression can be also expressed as C. Okay, pero ito yung last resort natin. Usually, this is the last option that we have in proving identities. Okay. So let's establish the following identity. Let's start with the easiest one. So cotangent over cosecant equal to cosine. Okay. So ito yung ating mga identities na alam. Ano? So ano kaya yung magagamit natin dito? Pwede natin gamitin to yung cotangent equal to cosine over sine, as well as yung cosecant equal to 1 over sine. So let's write it here. Yung left-hand side. So we're starting with the left side kasi that's the more complex. Okay? This is simple already. Okay? So yung left-hand side is equal to, the numerator is cosine over sine using this. Take note that our variable is x. Kaya instead of theta, we're using x. Tapos denominator cosecant is equal to 1 over sine x. Okay? So ayun, we replace both numerator and denominator by the expressions on the TRIGO identities that we know. And then what do? We can cancel actually the sine x kasi pareho silang nasa denominator. Okay? So ang matitira na lang is just cosine x over 1 or simply cosine x, which is equal to the right-hand side. And that's it. Okay. Now let's go to our second one. Sine theta times cosecant theta minus cosine squared theta equals sine squared theta. Remember, this is a product. So parang gagamit tayo ng PEMDAS rule now. So hindi mo, yung ibang students nako-confuse, ito isa-subtract. No, it's not that. So PEMDAS rule still applies here. Okay. So balikan natin yung mga identities natin. We can make use again of the TRIGO identity involving cosecant theta, which is this. Okay, gamitan natin ito. So we can express the left side as this expression. Pinalitan natin yung cosecant theta ng 1 over sine theta. Okay. Magka-cancel lang yung sine theta. Ang natira na lang dun sa mean when is 1. So we have 1 minus cosine squared theta. Ano ba yung pwede nating magamit dyan? We can make use of this identity. Diba? By moving the cosine squared to the other side. That's 1 minus cosine squared theta, and that will be sine squared theta. Okay, so that's the right-hand side already. Okay? Ayun, ang dali lang, diba? Masaya. Kasi alam mo yung pupuntahan mo. Okay? Now, let's establish this identity. Medyo mas complex na, no? So, parehong left side tsaka right side. Okay? So, let's see what we can do with this one. Gamitan natin yung identity ng cotangent, ng tangent function. So, tangent is sine over cosine. Pero since we're squaring this, we are squaring the numerator and denominator also. Okay? Ayan. So, we're starting with the left side. So, wag muna nating pansinin yung right side. We're not supposed to write equals and then copy that one. So, wag ganon. Okay? So, let's erase that part. Baka malito po tayo. Okay, so focus lang tayo dito sa ating left side. Okay? Now, these are two terms. No? Isang fraction, isang parang isang term lang dito. No? So, ang gagawin natin is to make them similar fractions, or take note that we can actually factor out the sine squared. No? Sine squared is a common factor. So, pag nilabas natin si sine squared, you have 1 over cosine squared here. Tapos for this one, you have an understood cofactor of this, which is 1. Okay? Ayun. Diba? Pag dinistribute mo, it's the same thing yung kanina. Okay? Ano ba itong 1 over cosine squared na to? That is using this identity, that will be secant squared theta. So, ayun, secant squared x ang ating variable. Secant squared x minus 1. Looks familiar. So, ibig sabihin, hanapin natin kung anong pwede nating gamitin. We're getting near to the identity that we desire. We are targeting this expression. Okay? So, ang pwede nating gamitin is actually this. Diba? By moving the one, this one here, to the other side para maging secant squared minus 1, like this one, ibig sabihin mag-i-equal na to kay tangent squared x. So that will be sine squared x times tangent squared x, and that's it. That's already our right-hand side. Okay, so naging important yung factoring skill dito sa ating identity na to. Now let's try this one. No? How do we establish this identity? Alin kaya? No? Saan tayo mag-start? Let's start with the left side using the cosecant and the cotangent identity. So cotangent naman is cosine over sine. These are actually similar fractions, no? Pareho silang over sine theta. So, pag-isahin na lang natin, no? Yung parang skill na na kailangan natin dito, simplifying rational expressions, no? Rational functions. So, paano tayo nagsisimplify ng fraction? Kailangan natin yung skill na yun, no? 1 minus cosine theta all over sine theta. Parang hindi siya kahawig ng right side. Okay, so we desire to have a 1 plus cosine theta on the denominator. So that's what we will do. Multiply 1 plus cosine theta over 1 plus cosine theta kasi parang ito yung target mo. That's what you desire to have. So targetin mo magkaroon ka ng 1 plus cosine on the denominator. Gawa natin ng paraan. No? So pwede yun, no? Yung multiplying both numerator and denominator by the expression you are targeting. Okay? Hindi, parang sasabihin natin, hindi ko man kailangan yung sa numerator eh. Kaya lang, it's not legal, it's not mathematically legal to just multiply the denominator by this expression. Dapat kung ano minultiply sa denominator, we do the same thing for the numerator. Parang nag-multiply ka lang sa 1, so you're not supposed to change kasi the given. Okay? Ayun. So, magiging special product yung ating numerator. When you have 1 minus and 1 plus. It's like the A minus B sa special product natin sa algebra. It's like A minus B, A plus B. Yan, you have a sum and difference of two numbers. So that will lead you to the difference of their squares. Diba? This is equal to A squared minus B squared. So you have to square this term. 1 din yun. Tapos squaring cosine, you have cosine squared. Okay? Tapos you leave the denominator in factored form. We're not supposed to distribute that kasi we want to have the 1 plus cosine theta isolated. Okay? Ayan. So 1 minus cosine squared sounds familiar. That will be equal to what? Diba? By moving this to the other side, kasi magiging 1 minus yung gusto natin, that will just be sine squared theta. So that means numerator is just sine squared theta. Ayun. So nagkakalinaw na. We can cancel the one of the signs here. So yung exponent. Also the sign on the denominator. Okay. So may natira pang sign sa numerator. Tapos sa baba, ang natira na lang is the 1 plus cosine theta. And that is our right-hand side. Okay, so ayun, that's another technique. Actually, as you continue to practice proving several identities, you get to be more and more familiar with the identities that we have here. Okay. Yan. So now let's try this one. Cotangent x plus tangent x equals secant x times cosecant x. Parang hindi related. Ano? Let's see how this will be proven. Take note, this is addition. The left side is addition. The right side is multiplication. Okay? So, gamit tayo ng mga known identities natin. We can make use of this for the cotangent and tangent. Remember, our variable is x. Okay? So, i-adjust na lang natin. No? Instead of cosine theta over sine theta, we'll write cosine x over sine x and sine x over cosine x. Okay, so what we can do with this one, pwede nating gawing similar fractions by getting their LCD, which is sine x over cosine x. Okay? So, di ba paano tayo si similar fractions? Di ba this divide by sine x is cosine x times cosine x will be cosine squared x. Tapos, this divide by cosine x is sine x times sine x is sine squared x. Okay? Now you have cosine squared plus sine squared x and that is equal to this. No? So, ibig sabihin, the numerator is just equal to 1. Ayan. So, ibig sabihin, kung 1 siya, you can actually split the fraction. Diba? Kasi 1 all over sine x times cosine x, pwede natin siyang paghiwalayin. Itong product na, itong fraction na to, pwede natin siyang split into 2 fractions. Magiging 1 over cosine times 1 over sine. Diba? Remember, recall natin yung multiplication of fractions. Diba? How do we multiply fractions? Diba? We multiply the numerator by the numerator and denominator by the denominator. Ayan. So in the case of this one, pabaliktad. We're given with the product, tapos yung factors yung ginawa natin. Okay? So ano ngayon yung 1 over cosine? That is equal to, ayun, 1 over cosine and 1 over sine are there. So that will be this one, making use of this. Kaya magkakaroon tayo ng secant x times cosecant x, which is equal to the right side or right-hand side that we target. Okay. Yun. Exciting, ano? Now, let's go to this one, to the fourth. Sine to the fourth minus cosine to the fourth equal to 2 sine squared x minus 1. Okay, so let's do this. Let's start with the left-hand side. Ang ginamit natin is sum and difference of two numbers kasi medyo mataas yung exponent niya, no? Para medyo lumapit muna dun sa naka-square. Okay? Diba? Pagka to the fourth, parang isang split natin siya, divide natin siya into 2. Ginamit na naman natin yung a plus b tsaka a minus b. Difference of two squares to, ano? So, ang square root niya, sine square root niya, cosine squared. This is difference of two squares. Okay? Again, ang ginamit natin, let's write yung dito, yung a squared minus b squared, or in this case, a to the fourth minus b to the fourth, which is equal to a squared plus b squared multiplied by a squared minus b squared. Ayun. Okay? So, ayun. Let's erase that. Baka lang, para lang po manote natin. Now for our next step, anong gagamitin natin dito? Ito po, di ba? So sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So ayun, equal lang yung first factor sa 1. So ang natira na lang sa atin si sine squared minus cosine squared. Tapos ito yung tino-target natin. Okay? So gusto natin mawala tong cosine squared. Gusto natin madoble yung sine squared. So we want to express cosine in terms of sine kasi dapat wala siya, no? So we move the sine squared to the other side. So that means the cosine squared is 1 minus sine squared. Ayan. So si cosine is 1 minus sine squared x. Take note, it's preceded by the minus sign. So the grouping symbol is very important. So pag tinanggal siya sa grouping symbol, that means ito magiging positive. So sine squared plus sine squared will be 2 sine squared and then minus 1. Diba? Using the distributive property eventually. Okay? And that is equal to the right-hand side of our equation. Or our identity rather. This one. Okay, now let's do this. Okay, pwede tayo mag-pause ng 5-minute break pero you can just do that. You can just pause the video if you like. No? Pero let's fast forward na po. Fast forward na natin yung ating 5-minute break. Ayan. So medyo kunwari, let's imagine na nakapag 5-minute break na kayo. Or you can always pause this video and try this first on your own. Okay, if you are up for the challenge. Okay. So, let's see the left-hand side. Ito yung left-hand side natin. That looks more complicated than the right side. Okay. Yan. Take note that we group the second and third term, the last two terms of the numerator. Kasi, tapos pinactor out natin yung negative 1. Okay, so negative 1 was factored out. Diba yung understood factor here? Tapos, di ba, yun yung negative cosine and the negative, if negative 1, yun yung positive 1. There you go. Okay? We did that para makita natin yung cosine theta minus 1. Ma-establish na natin yung sine theta minus that binomial, sine theta plus that same binomial. Okay? Lumalapit ba tayo sa ating right side? Let's see. Ayan. So, ang gagamitin natin yung parang sort of conjugate natin na expression. This is plus, so we multiply by the minus version of that, no? Okay, so parang gagamitin natin yung trick ng difference of two squares, no? Yung difference of two squares na meron kang sum and difference of their square roots. Okay? So pag sinimplify mo yan, you have the sine squared, di ba? Minus the square of that binomial. Yung trick pa rin natin yung sa a squared minus b squared. No? That's why parang ito yung a, ito yung b. This is like your a plus b. This is like your a minus this b. Okay? Doon lang sila nag-differ sa operation. Okay? So, ayun. Kaya yung product niya, special product yan, is the difference of their squares. So, kaya in-square natin yon, in-square natin si cosine theta minus 1. But for the numerator side, they are exactly the same expression. So, it's like squaring that, no? Ayan. So, tingnan po natin. Expand po natin, no? How do we square a sort of binomial, no? Wherein this is the first term, this is the second term. So square the first term, multiply the product of this by 2. So ayun yung 2 sine theta times that. Yan, ayun yung product multiplied by 2. That's your middle term. Plus the square of the second term. Okay? Yung second term natin nagkataong binomial. Yan. Kaya second term, quote-unquote. Okay? Tapos yung denominator natin, yan, we square this part. So sine squared theta minus, if you are to square that, di ba, lagay muna natin siya sa loob ng parenthesis kasi we are being careful because it's preceded by the negative sign. So again, we're squaring a binomial. So square the first term, twice the product, plus square of the last term. Okay. Ayun. So very important yung algebraic skill natin. Okay. So proceed tayo sa next step. Nandito na po tayo. Okay. So ayun. Ang ginawa po natin, reflect natin itong squared na to kasi these are the same thing. Okay. So ayun na po siya. Kinopya na lang natin. Okay. Ayun. Tapos, ang ginawa natin dito, we remove this outside the grouping symbol. So, dinistribute natin yung negative. This is negative. The second term becomes positive. And the last term becomes negative. Okay? And then what happens also, pwede nating i-classify ito, tsaka ito. Sine squared plus cosine squared is equal to 1. Tapos may another 1 ka pa doon. Diba? Sine squared plus cosine squared is 1. Plus 1, di 2 na. No? So, you have 2. Ito na. Yung nawala na ito, tsaka ito. Those were replaced by 2. Ayan. So, minus 2 sine theta, cosine theta, dinistribute na po natin. Okay. Tapos this times negative 1 is positive 2 sine theta. Okay? Minus 2 cosine theta it's right here. Okay? Tapos sa baba naman, what will happen? Gagawin natin is yan, yung sine squared theta minus cosine squared theta, same pa din, ano? Pero anong ginawa natin dito? We can actually combine the terms, no? Some terms here, no? So take note that from this to this, yan, ginroup or pinagsama yung mga terms na related. Like si 2, kinombine siya with the 2 cosine theta, silang dalawa yung pinagsama. Tapos 2 sine theta, ito yun, and then this one, dun sa dulo. Okay, so kumpleto pa rin yung mga terms natin, no? Ni-rearrange lang. Okay. So, ang mangyayari, ito na sila. We will factor the 2 here. Ipa-factor out natin yung common factor na 2. Tapos dito, ang common factor naman is the 2 sine theta. O diba? Factoring is very important. So, nilabas yung 2, matitira si 1 minus cosine theta. Nilabas si 2 sine theta. Andun din si 1. Understood, diba? 1 minus cosine theta. Okay. Tapos dito sa baba, same pa din, ano? Wala pa tayong ginagalaw. Pero take note, sine squared theta, pwede nating isulat as 1 minus cosine squared theta. Okay, using the Pythagorean identity. That's another version, di ba? Yung sine squared is equal to 1 minus cosine squared. Nilipat yung cosine sa kabila. Tapos, ito, tsaka ito, sila yung common factor naman, di ba? So, that means pwede mo siyang i-factor. Parang it's like having 2a plus 2 sine theta times a. Di ba? So, the a there, which is that box expression, is the common factor. So, labas natin yun. Tapos, sa baba naman, the 1 minus 1 will cancel out. Okay? So, ayun yung numerator natin. Nilabas yung 2. Tsaka yung box expression, yung 1 minus cosine theta. Dito ang matitira na lang na factors, yung 1. Tapos sa second naman, ang matitira, yung 2 sine theta. Ay, yung sine theta na lang kasi nilabas mo rin pala yung 2, no? Ayun siya. So, sine theta na lang. Okay? Now, for the denominator, kinancel na natin yung 1. Tapos, pwede natin i-combine tong dalawang to. Diba? That becomes negative 2 cosine squared theta plus 2 cosine theta. Tapos pwede nating i-factor yung 1 minus cosine theta para kapareho nung nasa numerator. So dito hindi na natin ginalaw yung numerator. Sa denominator naman tayo nag-focus. Take note that we can factor out the 2 cosine theta. Nilabas yung 2 cosine theta. At the same time, inuna na natin yung expression na to. So that's positive 1. Dito magiging negative tayo. Negative isang cosine theta yung matitira. Negative cosine theta. Correct ba? Let's see. 2 cosine theta is there. Negative 2 cosine squared theta, yun yun. Okay, so dapat wala tayong binabago. Now we can cancel the 1 minus cosine theta and the 2. Cancel, cancel. So ang natira na lang, si 1 plus sine theta tsaka si cosine theta. By commutative property, pwede nating isulat yung numerator as sine theta plus 1. Tapos sa denominator, ang natira na lang yung cosine theta. That is equal to the right-hand side. Okay, so ayun po. So for our lessons learned today, we have derived the fundamental trigonometric identities, simplify trigonometric expressions, and prove other trigonometric identities. So I hope you are ready for the time for questions, beginning with question number 1. How do we simplify tangent x over secant x? I-pass forward na natin and the answer is sin x. Again, you can always pause the video if you want to have more time answering. Okay? Why is that? Kasi this will be sin x over cosine x. Denominator is 1 over cosine x. And the cosine x cancel out. So ang natira na lang is sin x. Okay, let's go to question number 2. Simplify sin y times cotangent y. Okay, fast forwarding our timer. The answer is just cosine y. Yan, that will be sin y times cosine y over sin y. Yan. Ang variable natin is not theta but y. So, ina-adjust natin accordingly. Huwag tayo masyado naka-fix dun sa ating kodigo na mga formulas. So, this will cancel out. So, ang natira sa atin, si cosine y. Okay? For number 3, secant squared theta times cotangent theta times cosine theta. How do we simplify that? Okay, fast forwarding. The answer is cosecant theta. Hindi ko pala naitaas ito. Ayan, so what will be the reason behind that answer? This is 1 over cosine squared theta. Square daw no? Tapos cotangent is cosine theta over sine theta multiplied by cosine theta. Ayan, so magka-cancel. Cosine theta times cosine theta is cosine squared theta, so it will cancel with that 1. So ang natira is 1 over sine theta, which is equal to cosecant theta. Let's see number 4. Simplify tangent t plus secant t times tangent t minus secant t. Okay, fast forwarding our answer. This is equal to Negative 1. Bakit equal sa negative 1? Kasi lalabas, parang yan yung A plus B, tapos A minus B. So sa special product natin, this is just the A squared minus B squared. So that's actually just tangent squared T minus secant squared T. O di ba sa identity natin, what is yung secant squared T is equal to 1 plus tangent squared T. Ayan, so ang gusto natin yung tangent squared minus secant squared T. So si 1, lilipat sa kabila. Ayan, para magsuswap si 1 tsaka si secant squared and the 1 becomes negative. Okay, so that's it. Hope you got 4 out of 4 in this set of exercises. Protect yourself from identity theft. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned a lot from today's discussion. Have a nice day. God bless you.